Welcome back once again to the 2017 Block of the Month. We are now on Lesson 11. This lesson covers Part 2 of Let's Quilt It and the quilting stitches used in this quilt. In Lesson 10, we covered the setting triangles, which gave us stitch 1 and 2, the circles and plumes. It also covered the setting triangles along the inside of the pieced border and included again design 1 or stitch 1 and also the inclusion of ruler work, in this case the straight edge ruler. Now it's time to go over the rest of the stitches that we will be using in this quilt. I'll explain each one and then point out where we're going to use them. Stitch 3. Let's do the next stitch. And we've done this on the sampler, so it's nothing new for those of you who have done the sampler. It's called tucking in the baby. The most important thing on this stitch is try to stay consistent as far as the distance away. And of course your stitching is going to match your fabric again, so you're not going to see where it ends up on the sides. Some of you may find it's easier to turn your fabric around and stitch from this side so you have better visibility as far as how far apart your arcs should be. It's just like the bottom of a rocking chair. And they don't have to be real close together. We're just creating texture. Stitch 4. Another stitch that we're going to use is going to be going up and down, and it's a feather. So we're going to start at the bottom, but we're not going to do a spine. We're just going to use the seam. There's going to be a seam line that we're going to follow, and we'll treat that as our spine. So we're just going to make that teardrop. Remember that bird swing around the sun and back? That's all we're going to do. Now, we can do it one of two ways. We can go around the sun again. And this is your traditional bird swing around the sun and back. Or, when we get to the other side of this, I'll show you another way we can do this. Now we can come down that seam line if you want a noticeable stem, or you could have stitched in a ditch around. Now here's another way you can do this feathers. You can do the first one like normal, and then we're going to go higher. Touch the tip of that one, backtrack just along the curve, and back again. That's the bump back feather. So you have two ways of doing that feather, and you can choose which you like. Now if you notice, this feather doesn't have any spacing like this feather does. So it depends on the look you're going for. Since most of you have used a printed fabric where we're going to be stitching this feather, it really doesn't make any difference which one you use. Just use the one that you're comfortable making.
Stitch 5.
The next stitch that we're going to do is called the wishbone stitch. You want to make sure that your fabric is straight up and down to you. And we're going to start in the middle of the area that we're going to be stitching in. And we're going to start out by doing a loop. And then we're going to go slant down, another loop, slant up, another loop. Now what you want to do is this time we want to hit this bottom line, but we want to go all the way up to the top line, which you probably can't see. But the nice thing about this stitch is it's so easy to convert it to any size space. And it's a beautiful filler. And it's so easy to do. And you can tighten up your spacing. But notice these two lines right here as I stitch. They're parallel to each other. And I'll point that out to you more as I get to the end of the stitching. And I'm going to go back up to the top line again. And we're going to finish up in the middle like we started. Now what I was talking about is right here, these lines are all parallel with each other. And there you have your wishbone stitch.
Stitch 6.
Another great stitch to work on, and this is just straight stitching with a little curve on top. And I keep the lines a foot distance apart. It's easy to gauge them that way. And again, you want to make sure that your fabric is straight up and down from you. Don't slant it this way or this way. Keep it nice and straight. And here we go. When you get to the top, don't worry so much about that curve. Just concentrate on bringing it around and it'll curve all by itself. Remember, keep that fabric straight and use your foot to guide the distance. Now if you want to make these closer together, sometimes you can not go a full foot apart. Just use the inside of the foot or whatever you have on the foot that you can gauge by. Now you can get them closer together. But if you want to go back to something wider apart, again you can use the foot. Go a little bit further than a foot, and now you have them even wider apart. The most important thing is to keep your fabric straight up and down. And when you get to the line, just get ready, and when you go the other direction, you'll get that curve automatically. It's just something you don't even have to worry about. It just happens. This is a great filler stitch. It's wonderful in a sashing. A lot of uses for this stitch.
Stitch 7.
Another stitch that we're going to use is an inverted E. So we're going to start up here at the top, And we're going to swing down to the bottom line, make an E, and swing back up again. Start at the top again. Make your E loop, and back up at the top again. Again, this is a nice stitch all by itself, but it's even better if you double it up, although we're not going to do it on our quilt. I'll show you another way that you can use this. So we're going to come over here, and we're going to do some L's. And that's a nice, something a little different for stitching in the ditch or for stitching your sashing.
Stitch 8.
Now we're going to do some of the more solid fills. And the first one we're going to do is a scallop. Now on the block that we're going to put this in, the scallop is going to be a lot smaller. But I want to stitch it out bigger so you can see how it's going to go. We're going to start in the corner. And we're just going to do some half circles. Sort of like when we did the circles or the eyes in the first stitch. Okay, so now we have that done. Now let's back up. And let's come down to the center of that. Always keeping your eye on the center of the next one. You'll learn as you're free motion quilting, the most important thing is to always keep your eye on where you want to go, not where the needle's at. So we're in the middle of this hump, we're just going to come around. And again, the ones that you're going to be doing in the block are so much smaller than these. And they're going to be on a printed fabric with a thread that's matching a lot better. So you're going to be fine. Now let's climb up the ditch here, come back down the middle of that one, and let's continue across. And that's all there is to this stitch, just a bunch of humps. This stitch is also known as the clamshell stitch. Again, you want to aim for the center of the hump underneath it. Keep your eye there so that every time you come back around, you are definitely hitting that with your stitches. If you watch your needle, you're never going to hit that the way you should. By watching where you want to go instead of where you're at, you'll have much better results. And I don't know why I went up like that. And I got distracted, kept my eye off of where I was going, and didn't quite hit that there. So let's get back with our mind games. Keep my eye where it's supposed to be. So those are our shells our clamshells. They're pretty easy to do.
Stitch 9.
Okay, this next stitch we also did on our sampler, and everybody hated it, but we're going to give it another try, because once you get used to doing this, I think you're going to really, really, really like it. Let me adjust this camera just a little bit. Okay, this is a C. Back up, and here's another C, but going in a different direction. Up, and we just ran out of bobbin thread. So let's fix that. Okay, let me show you, this is another learning moment. Whenever you break your thread, a lot of people don't know what they should do next. Do I have to rip it all out? I don't. Let me show you how I do it. I'm going to place my foot right over, about 1/4 of an inch before it broke. And I'm going to lower the needle to make sure that I'm going into that exact spot. Let me pull my thread up. Okay. Now let's do it again. Lower it so that I'm hitting the exact place where the stitches before were. Move that out of the way. Now I'm going to carefully stitch on that, come back, and I'm just going to keep on going. So you come back on top of the C and go left. Come back on top of the C and go right. And let's cut this thread out of the way. And let's come back up on top of the C and go right. Top of C, top of the C, maybe right about here. The nice thing, you can stop wherever you want on that C to get it to go in the direction you want it to. You want to kind of try to change the directions if you can. So there's one direction. I'm going to come up on top of here. I'm going to go in this direction. Come up, go in the opposite direction. Come up, opposite direction. Now, if you have a hard time backtracking, let me show you what we can do with that. Let's make it lacier. So there's this, and we're just going to make a little teardrop on top. This saves you from a lot of backtracking. You still have a little bit, but not as much. And if you don't hit it dead on, it looks like you did it on purpose. It almost looks more like a vine. The other reminds me of like wrought iron work. This one seems more lining. So you can try it either way. Whichever way makes it easy for you. If you get two going in the same direction like I just did, it's no biggie. Just relax and enjoy the stitch. And there you go.
Stitch 10.
Now this stitch will seem very familiar to you too. All you have to do is remember baby bear, mama bear, and papa bear. And you'll have our Paisley filler. So here's our baby bear. And of course you're going to be doing this also in a much smaller area, but this will get you used to the movement. Now if we can't get a whole one here, we'll take advantage of the ditch and do a half a one, because we want to keep changing the direction of where these are going to. Now I really want to end up here in the corner, right up here, so I can finish this square. So instead of backtracking the normal way, I'm just going to go around that way. So now I can finish that up. And I'm going to sneak around the ditch again. And I'm going to come down a different way. So there's your baby. And your mama. And your papa. Again, don't be afraid. When you're filling in a small area, take advantage of that ditch so that you can get to where you need to be. If you can only make a partial stitch, then that's what you're going to do. For example, I'm going to pretend like this was the baby, this was part of the mama, and this was part of the papa. That got me out of that tight corner. Now I'm going to go the opposite way. Now if I swung back around, I'd end up down here, and I really want to be over here. So I'm going to come back and go around the same way again. Now I can't fit it in, so I'll stop there. Let's fill in this area. Can't fit in the whole papa bear there either, so we're going to stop. Pretend like it went underneath. So all you're doing is coming in between the stitches that you've already stitched and put another drop in there. Now we have two options. We can come over here and finish that up, or we can stay over here and finish this up. Let's sneak down here to the beginning and finish this up first. So then it's out of the way. Can't get it all in there. I'm going to use my ditch. You notice I'm keeping my pieces pretty much evenly spaced, or even sizes, rather than trying to make little tiny ones to fit. If I have to make a half a one, I'll make a half a one. Now what am I going to do here? I'm just going to echo. There's no rule that says I can't have a grandfather and a great-grandfather. So there's your Paisley fill.
Stitch 11.
Now this next stitch is the one that so many folks start out with when they start their free motion quilting journey. It has always been my nemesis. I hate doing this stitch, and I'll tell you why. Every other stitch that we've done on this journey that we're on right now has a purpose. It has a reason for being there. There's a structure, and I'm a very structured person. Maybe it's my OCD kicking in, but I just have a terrible time with meandering because it makes no sense to me. So I found a way to do this so it will start to make a little bit more sense as I stitch it. Do you remember that bubble writing we used to do when we were little kids? We'd make the letters big and puffy and we'd join them together. But that's what I have in my head when I'm meandering. So I'm going to start out by writing, I hate meandering. So here we go. There's my I, my H. Now some of the letters you can't quite finish because you don't have room. And you can't do the center. There's my A. There's my T. And there's my E. And here's my M. And I need another E. And I need another A. And an N. This one's kind of backwards. And I need a D. And another E. And an R. And another I. And another N. And a G. And maybe we'll put an exclamation point in there. And come up here and do a sort of a heart. And maybe a dog bone. There's all kinds of things that you can think of when you're doing this stitch. But that's how I get through it.
Stitch 12.
Shallow curves. Aim for the points. And we're just going to kind of do the top part right now. And when we get down to this part, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to swing up and swing back down to the point. Watch where you're going. Remember, you want to aim for the point, not watch your needle. And that's all you have to do for that stitch.
Stitch 13.
Again, we have another stitch that we did before on our sampler. And just as a review, You don't want to do big curves, and we want to keep our eye on where we're going, not where our needle is at, so that we always hit the points. Keep your eye on where it's going, not on where it's at. Hit that point, move up. Don't try to do big puffy curves. That's not the place for this right now. You just want kind of shallow curves. Keep your eye on the spot you're going to, not where you're at. And just get into a little rhythm with this. Now we're going to be using this on the quilt in places where we have small squares. Now we're going to go back the other way, and we're going to go down and up, over, down, up, over, down, and if you don't stitch as fast as I do, you know what? It's okay. A lot of people stitch much faster than I do, and it's still okay.
You just stitch at the speed that's comfortable for you.
Now we're going to finish this off. I'm just doing that little jump all the way around. Keep your eye on the points. And again, shallow curves. Shallow curves. Everybody tries to do this stitch in making big puffy curves, but that makes your orange peel look worse. You just want to make nice shallow curves, and you'll end up with that.
And last but not least, stitch 14.
Now I want to show you one other thing in the orange peel stitch, and that's how we can fill. There's going to be a couple places where we're going to fill in this design, and it's very easy. You can fill it in with a really tiny meandering. You can fill it in with just a scribble stitch. That's a stitch where you can actually cross the line. This is a scribble stitch. No quilt police on this one. And basically all it's doing when you do this kind of a fill is you're trying to puff up this part. And when you've got all that stitching so close together, that will make these puff up. These. Now, if you can't do that stitch or you don't like that stitch, you can do other stitches. You can do a very close straight stitch. And it serves the same purpose. It's just pushing down the batting in between to make the batting underneath the ovals that are formed in the stitch puff out more.
So you have now learned every stitch that we're going to use in this quilt. And I'll have another video detailing each block for you and the borders. All the stitches that we've just gone through have the practice sheets for you in our workbook. Until next time, have fun!